So guys, today we're going to be doing a video on Battlefield 2042 using the Steam Deck. We're going to be starting it off with 800p on the lowest setting. This game was one of the most intensive games that we had in 2021. Now, although it's been fixed quite a bit and it's running a lot better than it did at launch, it's still very intensive on your CPU and on your GPU, so I thought it'd be a good idea to go test this out on the Steam Deck since it's very power limited and the CPU is its downside. So I was wondering how it's going to run, but as you can see, we are able to play the game and we were able to hold 30 to 40 FPS at 800p low settings. Now I am playing in Conquest Exodus, which is a 64 player playlist, but I will be testing out Rush and 128 players as well. So my first impressions are the game does look quite good, even on low settings. Everything looks very clear, very sharp, but the one downside is the smaller screen makes it very difficult to spot enemies and actually see where you're getting shot from. But other than that, the game looks good. It's running pretty decently as well. We are sitting at 30 to 40 FPS like I said before, but you will see some dips, some massive FPS dips, and even some freezes when some intensive scenes will happen, like explosions or buildings blowing up. And we don't get too many options either. We can't use the system-wide FSR since we're not in SteamOS, and the game doesn't have FSR built in. It has DLSS built in, and that's NVIDIA exclusive, so we can't use that. And there are only two resolutions in the game as well. We have 1280 by 800, which is the Steam Deck's native resolution, and we have 800 by 600. I took a look at 800 by 600 beforehand, and the game just bugs out, and the UI is all messed up, and everything's zoomed in, and the aspect ratio is actually broken. So I think I'm going to stick to the dynamic resolution in the in-game settings, since that will automatically adjust the resolution for us. I also just want to say that I've been to the BIOS and I've increased the UMA buffer size to 4GB instead of 1GB, which is default for the Steam Deck, since I'll be getting a couple of comments about that as well. So this is the best case scenario, I guess, for this kind of setup. But honestly, the game's performance is pretty decent still. It is definitely playable. The hardest part is finding enemies and shooting them, since they're so small. But I think the performance can be increased by just playing Rush or a smaller playlist with less players. And I'm not going to be trying out the other options like medium, high, and ultra, obviously, since we're already struggling to get a stable 60, or even 60 at all with this kind of setup. So I'm going to stick to low and try to push it up to as high of a frame rate as I can possibly get it to. But regardless, we are using dynamic resolution here, so it should be running at 800 by 600, and I can definitely see a massive decrease in quality. All the stuff in the distance look very blurry, not so much pixelated, but definitely very blurry. And we're still getting some stutters here and there, but FPS is much higher. We're in the 50s now, almost the 60s, while we're out away from the combat, just running towards the actual zones. And if you're wondering about the battery life, we're uploading 16 watts, the CPU and GPU together. It's not counting the speakers, the screen, and all that. Those will add up to it. So we're pretty much pulling around 28 watts of power, which is around an hour and a half of battery life. Which isn't the best, but it is what it is, I guess. Now the casting border tower is coming down. So we're getting any stutters here. We're definitely getting some FPS drops, stuttering heaps. Yeah, we're falling quite a bit into the 30s and the mid 40s from the tower falling. So I couldn't find any games for 128 players in Conquest or any of the game modes, so I'm forced to play in Portal. And this is the only server that has 128 players actually playing in it, and they're all trying to farm XP, I guess. So they're all sitting in this one little hangar, and they're all shooting up in the sky, throwing ammo boxes down. But as you can see, FPS is dropping down into the low 20s, even 16 to 17 FPS as well. And as we leave the area, we go up to the 40s again. So just depends what area you're in and what's going on the screen at once. Alright, and now for the final part of the test, I'm going to be trying to play Rush. This is also a Portal server as well, because I tried to play Portal with the actual official playlist and there was no one playing it. It was literally an empty server. So I'm forcing the Portal again. And this has around 16 players playing on this map. I think the official Rush has 32 players, so it's around half of that. But as you can see, FPS is far higher. We're in the 60s now, high 50s to 60s. Dynamic resolution is still enabled, obviously. We're not playing at 800p native. And but yeah, FPS is hitting the 60s. So the smaller the play count, the smaller the server, the higher the frame, since the game won't be as CPU bound. And yeah, we're getting 60 to 65 FPS here. Very nice. Stuttering is very minimal. We're hitting 70 FPS just then. But it is still stuttering here and there. Now indoor FPS will be a bit higher than outdoor FPS. We are able to hit 70 FPS indoors, and then outdoors we are in the mid 50s to 60s. But I think honestly you want to use VSync here, since the game is stuttering far more when the FPS is uncapped. Alright, now we're outdoors and we're running the game at native 800p now. I've turned off dynamic resolution, and surprisingly FPS is still doing quite well. We are in the mid to low 50s now instead of the 60s to mid 60s. Still FPS is very nice, but the clarity is insane compared to 800 by 600, where we had a lot of blurriness and the clarity was just not there. We just had to dip into the 40s there. Honestly, if we could cap the FPS to 40, it might be ideal for these smaller servers, but in those bigger servers, you're gonna definitely fall down below 40 as well, into the 30s and even the 20s at times. But regardless, I think it's kind of cool that the game can actually be ran on the Steam Deck, and it performs decently well as well. Even though it's not ideal, and I don't think anyone's gonna be playing this on the Steam Deck, still cool. And yeah, that's it for the video, guys. If you made it this far, appreciate you. And as always, if you like what you see, then a like and a subscribe to the channel as well. See you next time.